On Halloween night, the quiet town of Briarfield had its usual glow of carved pumpkins and porch lights. But there was one house that everyone stayed away from, the old redwood mansion at the end of Sycamore Street. It hadn't been touched in decades, the windows covered in dust, the porch sagging like it was tired of holding secrets. But people said that every Halloween, just after midnight, the house came alive with lights even though no one lived there. Most assumed it was just kids messing around. But this year, everything changed when three friends, Ethan, Caleb, and Riley, decided to go in for a dare. None of them believed the stories. They were just bored teenagers looking for a thrill. But they had no idea that the mansion had been waiting for someone to step inside. As they pushed open the rusted gate, the sound echoed down the street like it was warning them. The wind suddenly dropped, the night becoming still and unnaturally quiet. Ethan led the way with his phone flashlight, joking to hide the nervousness in his voice. Caleb followed, acting tough, but he kept looking around like something was watching them. Riley stayed close, hugging her jacket as the cold seeped through the air. The front door was already cracked open, just enough for someone to slip through, as if the house was inviting them in. When they stepped inside, the door slowly closed behind them without a sound. Riley tried to laugh it off, but something about how silent the door was made her shiver. Inside, the air felt heavy, thick, like they had walked underwater. The long hallway was lined with portraits, old, faded paintings of people who lived in the mansion hundreds of years ago. Except the strangest thing was that all the portraits had their eyes scratched out. Caleb pointed his flashlight at one of them, trying to figure out why. But then the painting shifted. The shadows around it bent slightly forward. Ethan thought it was just his imagination until Riley grabbed his arm and whispered that she saw the portrait breathe. None of them wanted to admit it, but every step deeper into the hallway felt wrong, like the house was closing its walls around them. They made it to the ballroom, a huge open space covered in dusty wooden floors and an old chandelier hanging crooked from the ceiling. Caleb tried to make a joke, but his voice echoed too loudly, bouncing back in a warped tone that didn't sound like him. Ethan froze. That echo, there was something off about it. It was repeating words he never said. It was whispering their names. That's when they heard footsteps above them. Slow, heavy, deliberate. The house should have been empty, but someone, or something, was moving upstairs. Ethan swallowed hard and said they should check it out, but Riley grabbed his sleeve and said they needed to leave. Caleb smirked, saying they were already inside. Might as well finish the dare. None of them realized the house had already decided they weren't leaving. As they climbed the staircase, the creaking steps felt almost warm under their shoes, like something living was beneath the wood. Caleb reached the top first, pointing his flashlight towards the long upstairs corridor. Every door was slightly open, as if waiting to be chosen. The footsteps they heard earlier stopped. The air turned colder. There was breathing now, deep, raspy breathing coming from behind all the doors at once. Ethan whispered that they should just pick one and get it over with. But the second he stepped forward, the chandelier downstairs crashed to the ground, sending a violent shudder through the house. Dust filled the air. Riley screamed and grabbed Ethan's hand. The doors slammed shut at the exact same moment. Silence followed. A thick, suffocating silence. And then one of the doors slowly creaked back open by itself. Room number 103. A bedroom covered in sheets and cobwebs. The moment they walked in, the temperature dropped so fast that their breaths turned white. Caleb tried to take a step back out, but something grabbed the door from the other side and slammed it shut, locking them inside. Riley clutched Ethan's arm as they heard whispering seep along the walls. The whispering grew louder, clearer. It kept repeating one sentence. "Thank you for coming home." The closet door in the corner swung wide open. A tall, thin figure stepped out, its body bent at impossible angles, its skin stretched tight like old paper. It had no eyes, just empty holes where they should have been. The figure tilted its head, cracking sounds echoing across the room. Ethan tried to shine his flashlight on it, but the light flickered and died. The creature took a step forward, then another. The floorboards beneath it groaned like they were in pain. Riley screamed, and they all pushed against the bedroom door, trying to escape. The hallway lights flickered violently. Something was running toward them, fast, heavy, getting closer by the second. The creature behind them stretched its arms out, its fingers long enough to touch the walls. Caleb kicked the door as hard as he could, and finally it burst open. They sprinted down the hallway, but the house changed shape around them. The stairs were gone. The chandelier was back on the ceiling. The portraits in the hallway now had their eyes restored, except all the eyes were staring at them, moving with every step. The floor buckled and cracked, pulling them apart. Caleb slipped first, falling into the darkness below. His scream was cut off instantly, like something swallowed it. Riley grabbed Ethan, shaking and crying, telling him they needed to jump. The creature's hand grabbed her ankle, its bony fingers digging deep. Ethan pulled her with everything he had, and together they leaped through the broken floor as the house roared like a living monster. They hit the ground hard, the wind knocked from their lungs. Somehow, they ended up outside the mansion, lying in the dead leaves. The house looked silent again. Dark. Empty. No sign of Caleb. No sign of anything. People driving by saw Ethan and Riley sitting there, staring at the mansion with empty, shaking eyes. When the police searched the house, they found nothing, not even a broken chandelier. But every Halloween since that night, lights turn on inside Redwood Mansion exactly at midnight. And if you listen closely, really closely, you can hear 3 voices calling for help. One from upstairs, one from the hallway, and one from deep, deep underground. 2 weeks passed, but Ethan and Riley still couldn't sleep without jolting awake at the sound of footsteps that weren't there. Every night at exactly 3:03 a.m., they heard something tapping on their windows, even when they stayed at different houses. They tried convincing themselves it was just trauma or their imagination, but deep down they knew the truth. The Redwood Mansion wasn't done with them. And Caleb wasn't gone. They could still feel him calling. Riley found something strange first. She woke up with dirt on her hands and dried leaves tangled in her hair, even though she hadn't gone outside. And when Ethan called her that morning, he whispered the same thing happened to him. Dirt under his nails, leaves on his bed. Both of them felt the same burning pain under their arms, like scratches. When Ethan checked in the mirror, there were long, thin marks, the exact shape of the creature's fingers. Riley had the same marks, as if the mansion had touched them again, even from miles away. That afternoon, Ethan got a voicemail from Caleb's number. At first he thought it was a cruel prank from someone at school, but when he hit play, all he heard was heavy breathing and a faint voice whispering his name. Then a second voice joined in, then a third, then a fourth, one that didn't sound human at all. It hissed a sentence that made Ethan drop his phone. "Come finish what you started." Riley heard it through the phone speaker and felt cold travel up her spine. Caleb was alive, somewhere inside that place, and the mansion was calling them back. They didn't want to go, but the signs kept getting worse. Streetlights flickered only when they walked under them. Shadows stretched toward them even when there was no light behind them. Every reflection, mirrors, windows, phone screens, showed a tall, eyeless figure standing just behind them. Ethan covered every mirror in his house, but that only made things worse. That night, without any reflection to hide in, the creature breathed right behind his ear. Riley heard the same breath behind her bed. Neither could run from it anymore. The mansion wasn't waiting. It was hunting. By the 4th night, they stopped fighting it. They both knew the same unavoidable truth. If they didn't go back to Redwood Mansion, the thing haunting them would eventually come out of the shadows and take them. The mansion wanted them returned, and something inside it wanted Caleb back with them, or all 3 forever. Just before midnight, they stood outside the mansion again. The porch light flickered on by itself, even though the house didn't have electricity. Riley grabbed Ethan's hand so tightly he felt her nails dig into his skin, but he didn't pull away. They stepped inside together. The moment they crossed the threshold, The door slammed shut behind them, louder this time, like the house wasn't trying to hide anymore. The hallway was different now. The portraits were gone, replaced by deep scratches in the walls, long claw marks running from the ceiling to the floor. Something had crawled through these halls recently, and not quietly. The boards were warm again, warmer than before. This time, Ethan felt something move beneath his feet, like the house was breathing under the floorboards. Then they heard it. Caleb's voice. Soft, broken, echoing from upstairs. Ethan called out to him, but the voice didn't answer. It only repeated his name over and over, each time sounding further away. They climbed the staircase cautiously, each step groaning like it was warning them. The corridor at the top was pitch black except for one door at the very end, glowing faint yellow under the frame, as if someone inside held a candle. Riley whispered that they should turn back. Ethan whispered that turning back wasn't an option anymore. They slowly approached the glowing door. Caleb's voice stopped. Silence swallowed the hall. Ethan reached for the doorknob. Before he could turn it, something sprinted down the hallway behind them. They spun around, but the hallway was empty, except the lights above them flickered violently, and for a split second during one of the flickers, they saw it. The tall, eyeless figure standing inches away, its mouth stretched impossibly wide like it was smiling. The lights went out. Riley screamed. Ethan grabbed her wrist and pushed open the door with his shoulder. They stumbled inside and slammed it shut. But the room wasn't a bedroom. It wasn't anything recognizable. It was a hollow black space stretching endlessly in all directions. No walls, no furniture, just darkness. Then the floor beneath them shifted like liquid. Riley grabbed Ethan's arm and pointed ahead. Something was moving in the darkness, crawling toward them on hands and knees. They heard a voice. Soft, weak. It was Caleb. He lifted his head, eyes blackened, his face pale as bone. He reached out a shaking hand toward them and whispered, "You shouldn't have come back." Ethan stepped forward, tears filling his eyes. But before he could touch Caleb, something pulled Caleb backward into the darkness, fast, silent, like he was yanked by an invisible chain. His scream echoed across the empty space, twisting into something unnatural. The darkness rippled. Something massive began crawling upward from below them. Riley pulled Ethan back toward the door, but when she touched it, the door melted away like smoke. There was no exit, no wall, no escape. The floor beneath them pulsed again, like a heartbeat. Ethan whispered her name. Riley squeezed his hand and whispered back, "It's not the house that's alive." The darkness around them trembled. The whole mansion is a mouth. Before Ethan could react, the ground beneath their feet opened, splitting wide like jaws. Something grabbed their ankles. And then, everything went black. Ethan woke up, choking on dust. He wasn't in the black void anymore. He was lying on a cold wooden floor, his head throbbing. Riley was next to him, breathing fast like she'd been running in her sleep. For a moment, everything was silent. Then Ethan realized they were back inside the mansion hallway. The lights were dead. The air felt heavier than before, like the house had swallowed half their oxygen. Riley pushed herself up, trembling. "Ethan, we were falling. I felt it pulling us in. How are we back here?" He didn't know, but he did know one thing. The mansion wasn't done with them. It didn't want Caleb. It wanted all three. A slow scraping sound echoed from deeper in the hallway. Not footsteps. Something being dragged. Ethan turned toward the sound, but the dark was too thick to see through. Riley clutched his jacket sleeve like she was afraid the dark might rip him away. The scraping came again, closer this time. Ethan whispered, "We need to move. Now." They crept forward, every step sinking into the warm floorboards. The deeper they moved into the hallway, the more the walls seemed to breathe, literally expanding and contracting like lungs. The warm boards vibrated beneath their feet with something like a heartbeat. Riley whispered, "This place is alive. It didn't let us fall. It put us back where it wants us." Ethan didn't argue. He felt the same thing. At the end of the hallway, a faint glow flickered like candlelight. They moved toward it cautiously, the scraping sound behind them growing faster, as if whatever was following had picked up their trail. When they reached the glowing doorway, they froze. Caleb was inside. He was tied to a chair, ropes digging into his arms, his face pale and gaunt, as if he'd been drained of something deeper than blood. His head hung low, chest rising and falling in shallow breaths. Riley rushed to him, shaking him desperately. Caleb, please wake up." He lifted his head slowly, eyelids fluttering. His voice came out broken, empty. "You came back. It won't let you leave now." Ethan moved behind the chair, trying to loosen the ropes. Riley cupped Caleb's cheeks, trying to force him to look at her. "We're leaving together. All of us." But Caleb shook his head. "You can't save me. It already marked me." Before Ethan could ask what he meant, Caleb lifted his shirt. 3 black handprints, the exact shape of the creature's fingers, were burned into his ribs like brands. Ethan stepped back, horrified. The scraping sound entered the room. The air turned freezing cold. Riley turned slowly, her breath shaking out like smoke. Standing in the doorway was the creature. But this time, its form had changed. It was taller, spine bent like a broken marionette, its limbs longer, its face stretched into an impossibly wide grin. Its eyeless sockets dripped thick black liquid that hit the floorboards with a hiss, burning small holes. Riley whispered, "It's not hunting us." Ethan finished the sentence. "It's protecting the house." The creature lunged. Ethan grabbed Caleb, tearing the ropes free, while Riley slammed the door shut. The force of the creature hitting the door shook the walls like an earthquake. The wood splintered as claws punched through. Ethan grabbed Caleb's arm, yanking him up as blood trickled from his wrists where the ropes had torn into his skin. "Move," Ethan shouted. They rushed through a back hallway, one they hadn't seen before. The house was shifting again, creating paths, closing others, guiding them like rats through a maze. Doors slammed on their own. Floors twisted. The walls groaned, alive and hungry. The creature shrieked behind them, a sound that didn't belong in the human world. Ethan felt it shake inside his bones. They reached the front hall. The main door was wide open. The first time that had ever happened. Riley stared at it. "It's letting us go?" Caleb whispered. "No, it's tricking you." But Ethan didn't care anymore. He grabbed Riley and Caleb's hands and sprinted toward the open door. The house roared behind them, the walls folding inward like jaws closing. The floor buckled. The creature's steps thundered right behind them. They jumped through the doorway and landed on the porch. The door slammed shut behind them so violently the entire house shook and then fell silent. No heartbeat, no movement, no creature, just darkness behind the cracked windows. They didn't look back again. They ran through the forest until their lungs burned, until sunrise lit the sky gold, and the mansion was nothing but a distant shadow swallowed by the trees. Hours later, they reached the highway. A car stopped. The driver asked what happened. None of them answered. They didn't have the words. But as they drove away, Ethan looked through the rear window. There, deep in the tree line, standing perfectly still, was the creature, watching and smiling, as if the house hadn't lost anything at all, as if it had only just begun choosing them. And then Ethan realized something chilling. They had escaped the mansion, but the mansion hadn't escaped them.